begin, man. I walked on the yard, got my roll up, I got my orange, what they call Jackie Chan's on, got my khaki on. I've been in the hole 2 weeks, and I had dreadlocks at the time, so my hair is kind of like everywhere. And I walked the yard with my head up and chest out, like I didn't know what to expect. Like I'm like, hey,
I'm here.
I'm here, like I'm gonna make it back home by any means necessary.
If we, mean the people who have experienced this, aren't going back and helping people to re-educate how to get from this, and it's tough. There's nothing easy about it. You're branded for the rest of your life. You're branded as an ex-felon, but that doesn't mean you give up. That just means that that's what you're going to have to work through. And it's better than being in prison. This financial literacy thing is such a big deal, Aaron, because I think a lot of these people who are in prison, they are, and you and I both know, we've met some great people in prison. Good people that got down on the wrong path, all kinds of different wrong stories, wrong experiences, whatever. But if they can employ their brain into the right path, these people can make something happen. And you're doing that. You're actually becoming that person. And what it means for them to come in, you to come into their world in prison and tell them, listen, I've been there. They know you've been there. You can talk the talk. You did 9 years, and here I am, and here's what I'm doing now. That's the reason why that guy that was holding the basketball in the yard says, I'm changing. Welcome back, Nightmare Success In-N-Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome? Well, Aaron Smith is somebody that I've followed on his social media for a while, and I think he's got an incredible story. He grew up on the south side of Chicago, tough streets of Chicago, and as a lot of people that I was with in prison, he was a great entrepreneur. He was just in the drug business, and he got hit, and it cost him 12 years in a sentence. And when he was in, what I love about his story was he just decided to switch up his hustle. He had a great mind for the business, and he got a business degree. So it wasn't like this guy wasn't getting educated, but in prison, he really made a mindset shift. And switching his hustle, he was like, I'm going to make something happen when I get out here. And he did. He's created, he goes in, he creates workshops for financial literacy, about second chances, how things can happen, how you can get out, you make it work. He runs a trucking company called U-Turn Trans, teaches people how this can work for them on a second chance. He's got 70 some odd interviews he's done on Escape the Odds podcast, and he's just a man on the move. If you look him up, he's been on ABC, CBS, and all the stuff they're drawn to it because this is a guy. It's kind of like a Rocky movie. It's a comeback story. People like comeback stories, and Aaron is that guy that is decided what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to, what I'm experienced, I want to pay it forward. And he's going in and he's making it happen inside the prisons. And I love it. It's good stuff. Can't wait to unpack all of it. Before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. Who likes spending a couple of weeks walking the car lots looking for a car? And then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They are your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge, the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Aaron Smith, welcome in, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, I am glad you made the time to be here because you're doing a lot of things. And, I think, when you get a 12-year sentence, you can do one or two things. You can curl up in a fetal position and give up, or say, man, I'm going to make it. I'm going to do something. I'm going to survive. I'm going to overcome. And you came out fighting and making things happen. Take us back a little bit, Aaron. Where and how in the world did little Aaron, what was going on in little Aaron's world back in the day?
Yeah, man. I've always been like this entrepreneur, ambitious hustler, thinking about getting money from a young age, man. I grew up in a housing project part of my life on the south side of Chicago. Then moved to another neighborhood, which was just as drug-ridden, gang-ridden kind of environment. But nevertheless, like my household was structured, right? Mom and pop, step pops, he raised me since I was 1 year old, so that's my dad that I know. But mom was really about education, and I knew that I would get an education, but I also knew I wanted to get some quick money too at the same time. So even early as 6, 7 years old, I knew what was going on in my environment. I knew about cocaine. I knew about heroin. I knew about all these things that I should have known about as a kid because I
At
was
that
so
age, right?
yeah I was so inquisitive though, and but I also knew that again I wanted to make this money, so I started like hustling, like ironing my siblings' clothes, right? Any little thing that I can get an extra few bucks, just like this hustler mentality was birthed in me. And as I got older,
How
uh,
many siblings did you have, Aaron?
I have it's five of us. One of my brothers, he was murdered back in 2005. We were one
Yeah.
year apart. Yeah, so yeah,
God, that had to be tough as a kid. How old were you when he?
I was 20. I was 24. He was 25.
Wow.
That was about a year before I got indicted by the Fed. So it was a whole lot going on during that
Hmm.
time. But absolutely, it was devastating for me. Again, we were like Irish twins, right? 13 months apart, grew up together. I have three other siblings. One is 7 years my senior, who's also my co-defendant on this case, and I have two older sisters. So I'm the youngest of five.
You're the baby.
I'm the baby. I was the one that was supposed to make it out and go do something legit.
So Aaron, growing up as a kid, getting into, sounds like to me that you were kind of living in two different worlds. You were straddling your mom, it's
Yeah.
all about education, it's structured, and then you straddled into the streets and you were like, oh my God, look at what's going on here.
Yep.
At at what age did you get into the world where you thought, man, this is the streets? Like what this is what everybody is talking about. I'm in it.
Yeah, I would probably say like officially probably about 15, 16 years old, but
Yeah.
it was like a precursor to that stuff. Just hanging around, all of my friends were either they were all involved in gangs, right? Maybe not super deep involved, but they were all what we call in Chicago plugged, right? They
Yeah.
would they would they belonged to a particular organization. Myself, I wasn't, so I was one of the few in my neighborhood that wasn't plug, so to speak. But nevertheless, everybody respected me. I was a cool guy, and so. But at the same time, again, wanting to get that money, I started hustling around 15 years old. Started selling marijuana, and that escalated. Sold marijuana throughout high school. Started selling crack maybe around 17, 18 years old. Really, really petty hustling with that. I
Yeah.
had a friend who sold cocaine, so I seen the money he was making, and I'm like, well, I'm selling weed to all the dealers, right? I might as well sell some of this cocaine too. So that was short lived, maybe about a year and a half. Wasn't no kind of kingpin with that, but then I was introduced to heroin with my brother who ran an operation in the housing project. So got him.
Heroin is something, you watch all these things on Netflix. That was a drug that, because people were getting strung out on opioids and
Yeah.
Oxycontin and all those things, that then they would switch. They couldn't get the scripts for that, and so they
Right.
would flip over into heroin, and heroin became a big drug. And it was like one of those things that people weren't talking a lot about, but the
Yeah.
opened up, and all of a sudden heroin was a drug that was on the streets that people were trying to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. In my neighborhood, heroin has always been a big factor since the 80s. You know,
Yeah.
I remember as young as 6, 7, 8 years old, just, hearing the talks of heroin, seeing people that were strung out. So unfortunately, that was the norm. And of course, over the last 10, 12, 13 years, it has become this quote unquote crisis.
Yeah.
And nevertheless, not to minimize the effects of it, but it was always in our neighborhood. Like, it was a norm in our neighborhood. And so I got involved with that around 19, yeah, about 19 years old, up until my arrest at 25.
So you got into that, Aaron, and I thought the interesting part of reading up on you is that you were also involved in education. I mean, you were educating yourself also,
Yeah, yeah,
and you were building this business that was this drug business and going and creating, this education for yourself.
yeah,
And then you would drop back in and be running this drug business. What
yeah.
did that feel like to you?
It was just another day. Like, I knew what I was doing was wrong, but it was by any means necessary. In my mind, I wanted to utilize the school so I can be educated, right? Something I knew I wanted to get a college degree, so that was numero uno, that I was going to take care of that. But also at the same time, I had to feed myself and have all the trinkets of that lifestyle, but also making sure that I get my education simultaneously. And again, it was normal. There wasn't really it wasn't
It,
hard, man. It
but
was.
I mean, here's the thing that I think is interesting is that there's a lot of things that are interesting about it, but you've got yourself, you're studying, you're going through, you're getting a business degree, and
Yeah,
then you're also building and becoming something in on the streets that
yeah,
is a $15,000 a day
yeah.
business.
Right.
What were you thinking? I'm taking this business national, or were you thinking I'm going to straddle this thing and figure it out as I go?
I think. Well, I definitely wasn't. I had no plans on going national, right? Or anything like that. It was local but lucrative at the same time. Um, I wanted to be able to take the money that I was making and do something legitimate. And I
Okay.
tried that, right? When I was
Yeah.
2004, 2005, I started a t-shirt brand, was wholesaling that into stores, going to fashion shows. Like, I really wanted to do something different. At one point, I signed up like to go into like the army, right? Or the reserves or something. Like, I just wanted to do something different because
Trying to
although,
escape.
yeah, trying to escape. I had this degree, but at that time, like, everybody was like, "You need experience," and so I'm like, "Hey, I'll continue to do what I'm doing," but I wanted out in such a way, but nevertheless, the lure of fast cash. I knew I can always go back to selling heroin, and I could make X amount of dollars in no time, and so that kind of kept me around. And plus, everyone I knew, or most of the people that I hung around, this was their lifestyle as well.
Okay, so walk us through, Aaron. How did it go down? What when your nightmare happened? What
Yeah.
happened?
Well, as you know, the federal government, they watch you over a certain amount of time, so it wasn't maybe like most people. You get caught one time and you locked up. It was more an investigation. I remember in February 6th, 2006,
That's
I got a call from the DEA, which I know now is the DEA, and they called private. Normally, I don't answer a private call, and so I picked up, flipped the phone because back then we had flip phones, right? So I picked up the
which
phone.
were cool. Those
You're right,
flip
yeah,
phones were
right.
cool then. Yeah.
And so he called me by my nickname, which was Ace. Like, private phone call, sound like a white guy. Like, I don't know this person. And so they told me, like, well, we're at your mom's house right now. You need to come. We want to talk to you. And so I was like, yeah. I was like, put my mom on the phone. And I talked to my mom, like, hey, mom, are they being respectful? That was my way of asking her, are they tearing up the place?
Right.
Because I knew I had some things over there. Of course, my mom didn't know I had things at her house. And she was like, yeah, they're being pretty respectful. I'm like, okay, cool. Right. So I was like, okay, that's safe. Whatever's there, I'm okay. Um, but I also knew that if they found some of the baggy material that I had, that could potentially link me to some of the overdose deaths, right? So I was like, wow. So I'm thinking about all these different things, and the DEA got back on the phone, which I know now is the DEA, and I was like, okay, I'll be there. I'll be there in 10 minutes, which was of course a lie, and I never went. And but at the same time, my brother had got arrested. He got picked up an hour before then. I didn't know at the time, and so eventually he was released, and that's when I found out like everything that was going on. Like, okay, we're under investigation, but this is like 5 months prior to our actual indictment or complaint. And
Okay.
so from that point on, I was like, you know what? I'm out the game. But let me take that back some. The day before, or maybe a couple of days before, I was at a hotel and I came down to the lobby. It was like a movie. Came down to the lobby and my eyes fixated on the front page of the Chicago Sun-Times. And it said, you know, something to the effect of drop dead heroin overdose kills. And I'm like, oh my God. Right? I was
Yeah.
like, man, this is, I know that I
Okay.
have some kind of fault in this. Even though I'm not directly dealing hand to hand, my distribution is a part of what's going on. And I'm like, wow. And so I wanted to grab every piece of paper off the newsstand, right? But so I immediately kind of was like, okay, I'm kind of done. I'm gonna fall back a little bit, and then of course 2 days later is the story I just told you. And so I was really nervous because it was something high profile.
Oh yeah.
I had never been incarcerated, definitely not on the federal system. So I knew that it was the beginning of the end for me. I knew that I'll eventually go to prison, despite what the DEA agent said. They said, well, because I hired a lawyer, and I had a lawyer go down there and talk to the, you know, see who was it, and I found out it was the DEA. They said, well, they just don't want you to go down to the project anymore. Like, you're good, just don't go down to the project. And I just knew that was too good to be true. But as a young, naive guy, I'm like, okay, all right, cool, I'm done. I just won't show my face in the area no more. I can still
Right.
dibble and dabble a little bit, but I won't be in the area.
I'm out.
I'm
Yeah.
out somewhat. Because again, still attracted to that fast money, but maybe I can kind of utilize other
Play
people.
it on the edges.
Exactly. And so that's what ended up happening. So 5 months later, I was picked up with 47 other individuals for
Wow. They hit 47 in one day.
pretty much, yeah. Probably
Yeah.
maybe most were picked up on that first day. Yeah. So it was a really big thing.
So Aaron, you're picked up.
Yeah.
What are you thinking? I mean, because you kind of had some time to think about this. You know, if it's
Yeah.
going to be real, or
Yeah.
how involved are they? Like, what
Yeah.
are was you know you're being looked at. It's the feds.
Right. I was I didn't I knew that I'll be spending a long time in prison. I was all in my mind. I already knew like once the feds come pick you up, that's a long
No
time.
going back.
You're
Right.
going, you know, but I had never known anyone personally to get picked up by the feds. Um, because I just figured, you know, the federal government, when they pick you up, you're like this huge kingpin and you're making a whole lot of money, right? And
Yeah.
so I just didn't know what to expect. But I knew that it was going to be a long time before before I seen the streets again. And I was okay just coming home before I was 40 years old. Like I had already relegated my mind to thinking like this is going to be a ride.
What did your mom think? Because I
Oh
mean,
man,
she's got two boys
yeah,
that are wrapped up in this. Like, what was that all about?
yeah. Mom was she was devastated.
Yeah.
Just because she had so much, you know, high expectation for me,
Yeah.
especially had graduated college 2 years prior. My other brother was just murdered 9 months prior to that,
Mm.
and now she has both of her
Two
oldest
boys being
son, youngest
federally
son.
indicted.
Yeah, they're freshly indicted, and yeah, she was devastated. But she's a strong woman. She was able to get through it and hold us down throughout the time, and you know, kind of keep us focused when we were down during those years.
How long did you have to go through the process of from the time you guys got picked up until the time you're sitting
Yeah,
in the
probably like
courtroom?
almost 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, almost 3 years, and then I ended up got sentenced to 12 years.
It's a
Uh,
long time.
yeah, no criminal background, first time around. I ended up doing 9 years and 5 months. I got the year off for the RDAP drug program.
You and I both did that.
Yeah, yeah, and that was a experience within itself.
Yes, it is. And you know what's funny about it is that it's like the only thing, and things have changed
Right.
since, but First Step Act and everything else. But at that time,
It's the only thing you can get.
it's the only thing you can take,
Yeah,
and it is an experience because it's all segregated.
yeah,
You're in your own. You know, it's like a cult,
right, yeah,
but you know, I mean, there's some good things in it. You know,
yeah,
in my experience with it was, you know, some of these people who were running it wanted to be correctional officers. You know,
yeah,
they wanted the chain and the keys and the whole thing. They wanted to set people back. And then there were a couple of people that really were good people. And you know, if there was all good people in the deal, it's probably a really good program.
yeah,
But there were some bad apples in the program that really, you know, created, you know, an environment where it felt like um it could be better. I
yeah,
guess I could say
yeah.
that.
More of a punitive environment.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay, so you go in and you're sentenced to 12 years. Where were you sentenced to?
I was sentenced to Sandstone, Minnesota.
Okay, so
So
you're in
what?
Minnesota. It's
North?
cold.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, not that Chicago wasn't cold, but Minnesota's up more
Yeah,
further north.
it's a different kind of
Yeah,
cold. Like it snows all the way until maybe mid-May.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so I want to talk more about this deal of you going into prison and when the
yeah,
mindset changes. Before I do that, I want to recognize the White Collar Support Group. They're a sponsor for this show. It's the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who can help each other, that do help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've been through it, trying to get to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. Start here. Okay, so Aaron, you walk in. You're not going to be here for a week,
yeah,
a month. It's not like a bad church camp that you're going to
yeah,
have to be at and you can come back. It's 12 years.
yeah,
Walking into prison, what are you thinking at the age of
yeah.
25?
Yeah, my walking into prison because I self-surrendered with a
Which
12.
I did too. And that's a weird thing all in
Yeah,
itself.
exactly right. So when you mention walking in, I'm literally thinking about walking in from the car to R&D, which is where you first enter
It's a
inside.
weird deal.
Yeah, and so I was at this time I was 27,
Okay.
27, 28. So I had some time to kind of reflect on a lot of things that I was got myself into. Really got deep into my faith as a Christian, and so I was more than ready to kind of start this time and get it over with. Like
Ready to go. Yeah.
let's get this done and over with. The longer I wait, the longer
More
I
time you got. Right.
yeah, exactly. And so my daughter mom was pregnant at the time. She was 4 months pregnant.
Okay.
And so that was a big thing, heartbreaking for me, her and I to walk inside of, an institution and knowing that I won't see my daughter as a
I
free
can't
man.
imagine.
So,
I'm a dad of 3 daughters. I can't even imagine.
yeah, until she's 10 years old. But again, thank God for the strong mind that He gave me. I was able to, kind of suck it up and say, hey, that was my motivation to get back. My
Yep.
family and the business venture, the entrepreneur mindset, like really getting back to the essence of who I was. I just had to unlearn a lot of things that I had learned. And so going inside, I remember the CEO asking me, like, who do I want to give my belongings to, or who should we send the belongings to in the case of my demise? I'm like, whoa,
That's deep.
that's deep. I said, man, I never really thought about like dying here, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Something happening to me and not surviving in that manner. Um, so that really put some on my mind. And so I was like, My mom was my next of kin. I was like, this is crazy. And so that was really like one of the wake up calls, outside of course getting indicted within itself, but kind of really knowing that there's a possibility that anything can happen while I'm
Yeah.
behind these walls. And I had never spent time in prison before. And although I went to a low security, from the outside looking in, it kind of looked intimidating. After I look back on it,
Oh yeah.
we had a double wire razor fence. Seeing people, walking the yard, and so everybody's kind of looking at me because they could see me walking in. And I got in, I got a cellie. I was in the hole for 2 weeks waiting on
That's a
bed.
while.
Yeah,
They kept you for 2 weeks in the hole.
in the hole, almost 2 weeks. I was waiting on bed space. I guess the
That's
comp.
some shock therapy right there.
Yeah, so I didn't realize. I thought this is what my time was going to be like. So, 23 hours a day. I'm like, okay, well, this is what it's going to be. I kind of
You
accepted.
didn't know any different. They don't tell you any different in federal prison.
Right. And so I'm just sitting there. And so I get the phone, make a couple phone calls a week. You get the phone through the chuck hole. So you talking to the family, asking, how's everything going? This is the first few days while I'm incarcerated. I'm kind of holding myself up. And then I got a celly, Hispanic guy from Chicago. And he kind of gave me the lay of the land, like what to expect. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. I get a chance to kind of go to the compound and kind of walk around and be a little bit free. Like, yeah, it's a pretty laid back joint, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, cool. So that gave me a sense of relief. So now I'm just kind of ready to go to that next step, get out of this hole, right, and go to my unit. And
Almost felt like freedom, I bet.
yeah, and just another level of it. Like, just let me just get
Well,
on.
yeah, and I don't want to pass back that because the mind buzz of that situation. Because when I went, it was at Leavenworth. It's 1879 building. They
Yeah,
put you in the hole, and the thing that you realize at that point is that you have no more control.
yeah,
I didn't know if that was where I was going to be for the next 5 years,
yeah, exactly.
and it wouldn't have. I couldn't have said anything that would have changed it if it was going to be where I was going to be for the next 5 years, and that's such a weird mind buzz because until you get in that situation, Aaron, you don't know,
Yeah.
and they don't tell you anything, and they know that that's a mind buzz.
Mm-hmm.
They don't tell you anything. You just the next thing you know is when they tell you to go somewhere.
Right.
So how you get through that in your mind is crazy. I went through, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours of that. You went through 2 weeks of that.
Yeah.
And the idea of not knowing when you're going to go to the next, or is this going to be it, is a very weird place to be in your mind.
Yeah, sure thing. Just the unexpected, just you don't know, and so
You don't know.
the anxiety with it. But again, man, just a testament to having a strong mind and strong will. I knew I was going to survive. Like I wasn't going to lose my mind. I wasn't going to, do anything that was going to just kind of jeopardize like who I am as a man, anything like that. And so I was really prepared to do whatever I had to make it back to my family.
But don't you think it's interesting though, in that type of situation that you, down to your soul, you kind of learn that I can adapt to anything?
Oh, absolutely. One of the first books I read was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and ironically, that was one of the last books I read upon my release. And that
It's a
book,
great book.
it's a quick read, maybe
Yeah, it's a great
100
book.
pages or so, something like that. But sold over 10 million copies, and that book was just it really kind of helped me think about things from a different perspective. And so my journey began, man. I walked on the yard, got my roll up, I got my orange, what they call Jackie Chan's on, got my khaki on. I've been in the hole 2 weeks, and I had dreadlocks at the time, so my hair is kind of like everywhere. And I walked the yard with my head up and chest out, like I didn't know what to expect. Like I'm like, hey,
I'm here.
I'm here, like I'm gonna make it back home by any means necessary. And so I had to I had to man up, you know what I mean? And so to make sure that I was going to come back in one piece, in one mind, in one soul. And so I walked the yard. Compound was probably like a 200 feet walk. I'm walking it, and everybody, all eyes are on me. It's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. it's doing child time. People kind of moving around using the telephone and just kind of moving. And here I am, I'm walking this catwalk, so to speak, and
Yeah, everybody's checking you out.
and I'm just looking at them, eye contact with everybody, right? Like, hey, look, ain't no chump. You know, I ain't
Yep.
going. This ain't what it is. Again, I don't know what to expect in this situation, and so I have to protect myself. And so people just kind of looking, white, black, Hispanic, every nationality,
Yeah.
everything, right?
It's
And
a
so it's,
primitive environment.
yeah, exactly. It's a melting pot. So you probably got 500 people out there just kind of moving around, and I'm just walking with my. And they all know that I'm new because I got my Jackie Chan's on. I got my, you know,
Yeah.
uh, everything. They know that
You're the
you.
new guy.
Look,
And that is the one thing, you know, I was trying to check out everything I could check out before I
yeah,
went in, and there's nothing really to look at.
yeah,
But the one thing that is true is that they really do check you out. I mean,
yeah,
you know, when you walk in alone. And one of the things I think is really cool is when you walk out, you get so much. It's like a celebration of people, you know, high fiving and they're happy for you, and you walk out, and it's a celebration. But when you walk in,
yeah.
everybody's checking you out because you're walking into their world.
There you go.
You're now in their environment, in
Right.
their arena. What's this guy going to bring?
You're right. And then kind of to that point, I remember feeling, of course, surreal, right? That I'm locked up. Like,
Yep.
wow, I'm in prison for the next 10 years. I thought I had to do 10 years and 5 months
Yep.
without the drug program. I didn't think that I could get the drug program. And quiet as kept, I wasn't really eligible for the drug program. So that was a blessing within itself.
That's
But
a
in my
whole year
mind,
off for people who don't understand the RDAP program. You can get a
yeah,
whole year off going into that program.
right. You take like a drug rehabilitation program.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I had 10 years, 5 months to do. My out date was February or March of 2020. And here it was 2009. And I'm like, I got to get through this time by any means. Like it wasn't a moment in my life or during that journey where I felt defeated to the point where I wanted to give up because
Yep.
I consistently read about people that had endured similar situations like the Viktor Frankls and Man's Search for Meaning, like the Nelson Mandela, like the Malcolm X's of the world, like the Josephs of the Bible. So these characters and people really inspired me
Got you
to
through.
become a better person and make it through. Like, man, if Mandela can endure 27 years,
Yeah. 27 years in
this is
and
nothing, right?
yeah, exactly.
This is nothing. And so
Is-
that was one of the things that kind of really kept me motivated. And outside of my daughter mom at the time and that whole family unit, and then just wanting to get back to business, like legitimate business. Like, hey, I got a whole college degree. Like, I really can make something of myself and not shortchange myself again. So that was a motivating factor too.
So, you know, one of the things I was reading different articles and stuff, Aaron, about how you came in and were in prison and came out of prison. But, you know, one of the guys that was serving time with you, he said, you know, he took it really serious. You didn't want to waste time.
Yeah,
He was quiet. You know, he was serious about his time, that he was going to do something when he got out. And I thought that was interesting because, you know, when you're in prison, you can waste time,
absolutely.
and that time can be, you know, become part of a routine to
Yeah,
where you become institutionalized and you become part of the environment. What I thought was interesting about your story is that you had time, you had real time, 9 years, but the people who served time with you saw you as somebody that was taking your time, as not wasting time, but figuring out how you were going
yeah,
to use your time to better yourself to get out and become a better man.
absolutely. Yeah, I spent time around men that were upstanding. That like had some kind of belief system that this wasn't the end for them, and we grew a bond, a brotherhood, and even to this day, um, they're still dear friends and brothers of mine because
Yeah.
we helped each other get through it, right? We laughed together, we cried together, we ate together, and everything the person can do as far as that brotherhood and that camaraderie.
That's a
Yeah,
good point, though. In prison, Aaron, because there's hard days in prison.
yeah,
How did you get through hard days in prison?
man. Two ways. Well, three, right? Again, that brotherhood. because they had all experienced whatever I was feeling. They had experienced it already because they had 5, 10, 15 years in
Yeah.
already. So it was a resource for me, right? Another way, I would pick up the
Mentors.
phone. I would pick up the mentors. Yeah, I would pick up the phone, and I could always talk to my mom. She's going to pick up the phone if no one else did, right?
She was like your foundation.
Absolutely, and being able to, look at pictures of my daughter, right? Like, okay, this is who I'm going coming home to be a
Yeah.
father. This is my only child, and just that was a motivating factor. But most of all was my faith in Christ. I was able to again read those stories about Joseph and see myself in those stories. Like, hey, again, if he can make it through, this is only a test for me. Like, just imagine what God is going to do upon my release. And thank God, look at me now. I would not be on the Brent Cassidy show had I not experienced the things that I experienced. I would not have been on the, Good Morning America, the front page of Chicago Sun-Times, and all these different accolades and the connections and just having the impact that I'm having without my
And
story.
those stories, Aaron, they inspire people. I was watching some of those today. I was watching an ABC story, and he was following your story, and then he went back, and this one kid that was holding a basketball in the yard, and he said, "I'm changing because Aaron changed, and I'm going to become somebody because I know Aaron has become somebody," and I think that's such a it almost like makes me emotional when I hear that kind of stuff, because those are so impactful that you're able to change somebody's life.
Yeah.
My youngest daughter is a teacher in high school, and she's also a coach. And she shares sometimes with me stories of teenagers where she's able really to touch people's lives at an early age.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at Aaron, what you're able to do, like with that guy that was interviewed, I could see it in his eyes that he had decided, like you had decided, that he had a brain. He was going to repurpose his brain into another. He was going to switch his hustle.
There you go. Yeah.
And I think that's whatever that is, that has to fuel you up, because let's talk about when you're getting close to the door.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird thing when you get close to the door. What are you thinking? What's going through your mind?
Hey, back to what I said earlier. When I initially went to prison, it was surreal that I was there. Now it was so real that I was leaving.
Yeah.
So what happened in between that time, right? How do I go from not believing that I'm actually here to not believing I'm actually about to go home?
Get out,
right? So it was that acclimation. I got accustomed to my environment. Not that I was institutionalized, right? But again, man can get used to anything.
Well, and I think there's a thing in Shawshank Redemption where Red says to Andy Dufresne when they're looking at the wall.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so powerful. He says, these walls, when you look at them, when you first get here, you see them as a way to keep you in. And he said, the longer you're here, you see those walls as the arms that put and surround you with comfort. And that's such a weird thing.
Yeah.
If you haven't been to prison, but when you're there long enough, that's what you fight so hard to stay away from, is that you don't get institutionalized.
Yeah.
Those aren't comfort walls. Those are walls that you want to jump over to become into freedom. Problem is freedom gets further and further away from you when you're in. Yeah. And so you have to do everything you can to jump that wall to get back into what you know.
Yeah, man. So I was prepared, man. I was one of those guys from the beginning of my time that people would ask me early on in my time, you must be going home like this year, because the way you're programming and the stuff that you're doing, you're moving like somebody who's short, so to speak. And I say, no, I got 8, 9 years left. And like, wow. And I kept that up. And so it's almost like working out. I built myself.
You're working out your brain.
It's absolutely. I built this muscle up, and here it was time to use it.
Yeah.
Like everything that I have done, teaching financial literacy classes, mainly everything that I'm doing.
No, that's what I think's so cool about it. What you did in prison, you jumped out.
Yeah.
And then you jumped into everything that you were planning for.
Yeah.
Coming back into the prisons and teaching that financial literacy and those things that are important to get back out into your second chance. you had really trained for while you were in. And
Right.
I think that's, so many people don't do that. You know, you're probably in the 1 percentile, Aaron, of
Yeah.
taking all those things that you were able to program and then teach classes while you were in prison, jump out and then create an environment for people who are getting out to smooth that pathway for them to get their second chance working.
Yeah. But even despite, all the preparation, Brent, I got to keep it real with you, man. There was a level of anxiety. Again,
Absolutely.
that same um, not knowing not knowing what to expect. When I came in, I didn't know what to expect going out. Although I had prepared, I had a strong family network, everything that a person can do. Like I was most likely to succeed if there was a category.
Yeah.
Uh,
And 9 years is a long time regardless.
yeah, yeah. But what happens if you've done time before? You become decent. Well, I became desensitized to time
Yeah.
because everything looks the same.
Right.
It came to the point where I got so used to doing time where I would meet people that were fresh in prison, and they would tell me, "Oh, I got a fresh 188 months." I'm like, "Okay, that's 15 years, 8 months." "Oh yeah, you be home in 12 years." Like I'm talking about it like it's nothing, but that's a whole 12.
Real time.
That's a lot
Right.
of time. Or someone would say, "Oh, I just got 60 months." "Okay, that's 5 years." "Oh, that's short." "Oh, you be home
Nothing.
2 years." Like, do this, do this, do that, and people. I became that person that someone could talk to and say, "Hey, man, how do you do this time? Like, how you doing this time?"
Yeah.
But before that was me. I was the one asking people, "Hey, man, how did you get through this 15, this 20 years? Like, I need to know so I can survive mentally."
Yeah. But you humbled yourself into seeing people that were doing their time the way you wanted to do your time, and you asked them how to get through it.
There you go. It was
Yeah.
almost like a mimic, if you will, but
Yeah.
still, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So you're at that point, Aaron. You're getting ready to bolt out of there. What are you thinking of? I mean, it's like jumping in a moving car. What happens?
Yeah, well, my brother was my brother's my co-defendant,
Yeah.
and by this time he transferred to prison with me,
Oh, well, that's cool.
2015.
How the hell does that happen?
Right? So blessing, man. So he was able to come with me. Not only was he able to come on the same compound, he was my cellie
Oh my God,
for the
that's
last
unbelievable.
4 years that we were together. So we had a chance to kind of be together.
That's
It had
cool.
been like 7 years had I hadn't seen him in about 7 years up until 2015, and that was hard, man. That was probably one of the hardest things I had to do, to leave not only just my blood brother, but again that brotherhood that I had with a
Oh
handful
yeah.
of guys. It was like I teared up, man. Like it was a tough moment to leave, and
You know, I had a guy tell me that, and I use this analogy when I'm talking about to other people when you go into prison and getting out. They say it's kind of like this guy he was in the military,
yeah,
and he had also gone to prison. And he said it's kind of like when you leave prison, it's leaving the guys on the battlefield that you really care a lot about, and
yeah,
you're getting released off the war field,
yeah,
and they're still there.
right,
It's a weird thing because you're so excited to leave,
yeah.
and you also know you're leaving them there to fight their battles or wherever they are in
There
the
you go.
prison.
And that's exactly that's a great way to put it, man. So that's what I felt like, but also knew that speaking of that, we would work out and we would all leave the rec yard together, and we had this model where it's like no man left behind.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't leave the rec yard until all of us left the rec yard, and so it was kind of that feeling, and I knew that I had a duty to help change the narrative because I met so many amazing cats back there
Yeah.
that were like not even just from a business standpoint, just personally like
I so
really
agree
good
with you.
dudes, white, black, Hispanic, whatever, right? Because again, it's a melting pot,
Yeah.
and so I wanted to make sure that I told those stories, right? That I highlighted my journey and other people's journey, and so that's how Escape the Odds was birthed actually back in 2015.
Which I love the name of that. I
Thank
love the name because you're living that, you know. So Aaron, you get out.
Yeah.
What year was that? When did you?
2019.
2019,
Early 2009. Like this, yeah, around this time, 2019. Yeah.
February, March. And tell me, like, what your life is like when you get out.
Well, I was I went to the halfway house, and the halfway house, it was I was in for a shock because they put an ankle monitor on me, and I didn't realize that was going to happen. So that really restricted me. I had all these plans, you hear stories about the halfway. Okay, I'm gonna go to the halfway house. You got plans, right?
Yeah.
To kind of live a little bit, right? Nothing illegal,
Yes.
but
After 9 years, you want to live a little bit.
there you go, right? And so, but they wasn't happening.
No, I didn't like the ankle monitor, by the way.
Yeah, so they put the ankle.
Mine was defective, by the way. When I got there, it was the first month that they had the month before was the first time they had used ankle monitors.
Okay.
So I got a defective one and it wouldn't charge. And so, it was like a big deal if it didn't, if they would send you back or they give you a shot. I said, no, my ankle monitor doesn't charge. I've been charging all day. They finally believed me after like 2 days because they were going to like give me back to the BOP.
Yeah.
But the ankle monitor thing was bad, Aaron.
Yeah, so that was a hiccup for me, but even with that, man, I learned to overcome that challenge.
Yeah.
I had just overcame 9+ years incarcerated. Like,
right.
I'm free, right? This is nothing. Yeah, it's a little barrier.
It's a hassle.
Yeah, it's a hassle, but it kept me focused, and I didn't realize at the time, but I had needed that. Again, not like I was going to go off and straight and do something nefarious, but
right.
It allowed me to, okay, I knew I had to only go from A to B, B to C, A to B, B to C. And so again, that kind of kept me aligned to what my goals were that I had fought so hard to attain over the previous 9 years. And
so Aaron, I'm curious, like, because I want to know what, like, I know you had the Escape the Odds in the podcast, but how did the trucking business work into your entrepreneurial mind because I love it because there's a lot of guys I know that I was with at Leavenworth that drive trucks.
Yeah.
And how did that work? How did that get into your world of making that work?
Yeah, man. That was one of the goals I had because while I was on bond, I worked for a company called C.H. Robinson, right? They're like the largest brokerage company in the world. And so I worked there for about 18 months. So that was pretty the most professional experience I had prior to my incarceration. So I knew a little bit about, more than the average, about the freight brokering business, the trucking business a little bit. And so I said, I'm going to go back and get that kind of job, but I also want to start a trucking company too, just as a passive income kind of a thing. And so as part of my release plan, I put on there that I wanted to work for a freight brokerage company, and I did. That was my first job. I worked there for about up into 2021, maybe early 22. So really, last couple of years, I finally had quit. But again, I used that knowledge, and I decided.
Well, the other thing I love about it is you got the box truck deal that where somebody doesn't have to get a CDL, but you show them how they can get into business.
Absolutely.
Not having a CDL, but make a business for themselves, which is a whole nother pathway that you're teaching people in prison. That's what I love. How often do you go into the prison environment?
Man, probably, I don't know, several times a year, I would say. Yeah. Absolutely. Again, the last class I taught was in a few weeks ago, and I did that for 8 weeks. Prior to that, I was in Maryland. We had a workshop there, and pretty much all of the second quarter, I was out of doing the workshop.
Well, I tell you what I love about it is because this podcast goes into 300 prisons.
Oh,
and so what I love about it is that you could have easily just gone and done something else, but you created a business that really works for justice impacted people. The U-turn transport can actually employ people who need this job, but you're also giving them not just an idea of a job, but you're also showing people how to set up a business. You can set up this boxcar box truck business and you could actually do this and then build on this. And you're actually giving them a business plan.
Yeah.
This financial literacy thing is such a big deal, Aaron, because I think a lot of these people who are in prison, they are, and you and I both know we've met some great people in prison, good people that got down on the wrong path, all kinds of different wrong stories, wrong experiences, whatever. But if they can employ their brain into the right path, these people can make something happen. And you're doing that. You're actually becoming that person. And what it means for them to come into their world in prison and tell them, listen, I've been there. They know you've been there. You can talk the talk.
Yeah.
Did 9 years. And here I am. And here's what I'm doing now. That's the reason why that guy that was holding the basketball in the yard says, I'm changing.
Yeah.
I can make this work.
Yeah. One of the things I experienced, to your point, oftentimes when I go inside of an institution, one of the first things that young ladies or a guy will ask, like, have you been to prison before? Yeah. Because I might not always look like I've been to prison, right? So
might be dressed a little different.
Yeah, and so it's like, yeah, have you been here before? I'm like, yeah. And once they hear your story, it's like, wow, now they're
like, connect.
Because if they can see it, they can believe it for themselves. And so that's the impact of actually going back inside, and even not just going inside to tell my story to inspire, but to educate too, with the box truck course of financial literacy. And so
that's what I love about it, Aaron.
That's the goal.
You don't just go in and share your story. You're giving them tools to use.
Absolutely.
that can work, and you're sharing that with them. That's what I think is the magic sauce to this thing, the secret recipe. And you're dedicating your time to do that, which I think is so cool. And here's the thing, you and I, we haven't met before, but when you serve time, there's some kind of fraternity of, okay, Aaron served time, Brent served time. When you go in and talk to those people, okay, I get it. Aaron's made this work. I need to think about this because I can maybe make this work for myself. And that's what you're really doing. It's really making a difference, I think.
No, definitely. I appreciate that, man. And we need more of it. And I think as reentry becomes like top of the list, or at least high on the list for just society as a whole, you're going to see more of it. And I'm thankful to be one of the, kind of leading pioneers, if you will. Being able to provide those.
You are. And I was talking to Jay Jordan the other day that has done a lot of great work in California. And he said, if it's not us, who will it be? Because these reentry points are so difficult that it automatically segregates you to poverty if you can't find a place to live or find a job. So if we, being the people who have experienced this, aren't going back and helping people to re-educate how to get from this, and it's tough. There's nothing easy about it. You're branded for the rest of your life. You're branded as an ex-felon, but that doesn't mean you give up. That just means that that's what you're going to have to work through. And it's better than being in prison. Now you're on the outside and you're having to work your second chance.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, our goal with Escape the Odds is, one was the media aspect, right? To be able to bring that awareness to the documentary, the podcast, the documentary that we're producing, but then also to provide those tools through like workforce development and bridging the gap, right, with corporate America, with the impacted community. And I think that's so important. There needs to be that social responsibility of corporate America to people that's been marginalized, right? And so I'm just thankful for my experience where I can actually lead a role in that. So
that's a big deal. And I hope you do more of that, Aaron. And I think more of what you're doing, if it's something that we can duplicate, I talked to so many people over the last, 3 seasons on this show, and I see so many pockets of good things being done. If we could just duplicate that and make it happen across the nation, then it becomes a tidal wave of good. Yeah. And we, Aaron Smith in Chicago doing the stuff he's doing, if that can be duplicated so that those people in Arizona or California or Michigan get the opportunity to get back in there and say, okay, I have an opportunity. Yeah. I have an opportunity when I get out.
Yeah, if any correctional staff can hear this, directors, wardens, um, we need to be inside those institutions.
Seat at
Um,
the table.
Absolutely, we need to be there, developing programs, being able to talk to the men and the women, and
Yep.
even again being that gap, that bridge for when someone comes home, tying in with corporate America, tying in with the different institutions, the educational institutions, right?
Yep.
All these different pockets of organizations, just uh, stakeholders, right?
Yep.
Because 95% of the people that's incarcerated, they're coming back home.
They're going to come home. So what are we going to do? They're going to become your neighbor. So how do we
Yeah,
make that work? Yeah.
there you go. Yeah.
Aaron, I'm so glad you came on this show today. I want to know, after all the stuff that you've been through, and I mean, you've been through a journey. I mean, you lived this life, went through 9 years, you come out, you're doing all these things. What do you think's your biggest takeaway from everything you've gone through?
My biggest takeaway would be just to never sell yourself short. I sold myself short for cheap, right? I didn't value who I was. I didn't learn to value myself until I was incarcerated, right? Until I became this new person, this new mind, this new spirit, this
It's
new
deep.
heart. You know what
Yep.
I mean? I didn't know, right? And again, that's part of the environment that you place yourself in. It's almost like I want to use the analogy of like real estate, right?
Yeah.
The value of real estate is based upon where it's located.
Yep.
So where you place yourself is how you're going to be valued. But then another piece of it is adding value to yourself. Just like real estate, I can add value to a piece of property if I renovate the bathroom, right? I
Absolutely.
can add value to myself if I, continue to improve on myself, whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
physically, mentally, spiritually. And so to never shortchange myself again,
And I
to be
love that.
consistent about knowing my value and expressing my value to other people because they're only going to treat you how you treat yourself and value you how you value yourself. And so that's one of the biggest takeaways.
Man, Aaron, that's good stuff. That's a good place to end it because that is good stuff. That is, and for those who listen to this today, follow, subscribe, like. I mean, Aaron threw out some words of wisdom. Um, and I want to give a shout out to Greg Aftiev, Homestead Financial, who lets me do my podcast here for any home mortgage needs. Aaron just brought that up with real estate. Go to Greg Aftiev; he's your man to help you through that process. Aaron, if people want to get a hold of you, Escape the Odds,
Yeah.
escapetheodds.com.
Yeah, they can reach out to me at info at
Okay.
escapetheodds.com. The podcast is Escaping the Odds podcast on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, Instagram. I'm everywhere and definitely looking to do more inside the institutions with the box truck course
Yeah.
and financial literacy. So
I love it. I'll put it all in the show notes on where to find you.
documentary too. I forgot. I'm sorry about that.
Documentary. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the documentary Escaping the Odds of Recidivism was shot the, between March and July of last year, pretty much interviewing people that's
I've
actually in.
seen bits and pieces of that because you've let it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was some little snippets of kind of little teasers but we went inside of several prisons throughout the country and just wanted to kind of talk to the men and women about what it looks like for a successful reintegration, but also spoke with some other key stakeholders outside and
Yeah.
also showing some successful people like this can happen, but this is what it's going to take as well. And so I'm I'm praying that can definitely be an HBO hit. Coming to also an institution near you all. So if you guys are listening, just really looking to be able to travel with that documentary as a teaching tool. And so, yeah, if
I
I could do.
love that, Aaron. I love that, and I've seen bits and pieces of it. I love the fact of how it's. I don't know where it's going to land,
It's a
but
dream.
it's got good meat on it. It's got
Yeah.
good meat on the bone. If people want to check me out, go to brentcassidy.com. I spell it wrong. It's with a TY, not a DY. And as I used to say when I was writing my emails back and forth from prison, stay strong. I'll do the same. Aaron Smith, you are the man. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I had a great time, man, and keep doing what you're doing, highlighting the stories, man. We need more of it.
We need more of it. Nightmare Success, in and out.